but what about the Australian dollar strength this morning? I'm guessing it's in reaction to the Swiss franc move yesterday. Are you fielding calls by your clients, from your clients, asking what's going on here in the currency markets and how do you invest off this?
Look, it always is. I mean, the Australian dollar is one of the most talked about topics in all environments, and just given what is happening globally, especially in Japan and Switzerland, the Australian dollar is one of those currencies that is obviously not managed at all. It is freely floating, and it's one of those currencies that can clearly react to market environments. So it's been in very high demand lately from a lot of offshore investors, in particular in our bond market as well. And even though the Reserve Bank has remained on hold since November last year, the currency still continues to perform relatively well and hold up in an environment with a whole lot of global uncertainty.
Yeah, Belinda, it's a day of recovery really for the markets. The Aussie dollar is up, but so are stocks. With these declines, have you been advising individuals to buy in?
It's still hard, I think, just given what we're seeing out of Europe. I mean, there's still a lot of uncertainty coming out this week. We have the German Constitutional Court ruling later in this week, which I still think is going to be a very large issue for Europe. So I still think in all this environment, there's still a lot of uncertainty about what's coming out of the US in terms of policy, both by President Obama this week, as well as a speech by Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke, that I think there's still a lot of volatility out there, and it's too soon to actually know that we're on a firmer footing, just given there's so much policy uncertainty out there, both in terms of central banks, fiscal policy, and also currency intervention as well.
Belinda, before we went to break, you said there's a lot of global headwinds out there that might be affecting shares, so it looks a little uncertain in your view. You know, we had shorts being put on by hedge funds by the most in 4 years last week. Would you advise people to go into short markets right now?
I mean, I think it's a hard decision because you never know, as I was saying before the break, what the policy outcomes could be this week. I think it's a very uncertain environment to do that. I mean, we're still keenly awaiting what the Fed is going to do. I mean, there's growing talk about further quantitative easing or a potential twist to their balance sheet, which could lead to a relief rally in markets. So I think, as I said, the policy outcomes at the moment is so uncertain that I think it makes both shorting and going long a very difficult task at the moment by many investors.
So what do you do then? Do you just hold and sit still for a while?
I think it is a case of that at the moment, just given all the uncertainty out there. As I said, I think the next 2 weeks will be very important for the global outlook. I think one of the big issues in my mind at the moment about the situation is just that political uncertainty, both in terms of what's happening out of Germany and what's happening out of the US. So I think until we get some more clear political policies, I think it's the case of market volatility. I think in that environment it is very hard to make long-lasting investment decisions, which is obviously what we would recommend at this point in time.
I bet. Belinda, how about this? At the end of this year, do you expect to see the ASX 200 index higher?
Look, I think in terms of the Australian share market, there's a lot of positive trends going on. The Australian economy remains in a very sound position. We're still seeing a lot of demand coming out of Asia, and I think that's one of the biggest questions for investors at the moment, is whether or not the slowdown in US and Europe will transmit its way into Asia. And everything that we look at, in particular what iron ore and coal prices are doing, they're remaining elevated. I still think in terms of the profit outlook that you could see Australian shares move higher at the end of the year.